So, when asked to sum up the first half of the year, Mattia Binotto of Ferrari used the word positive. I, on the other hand, would just use the word shit. Hey there guys, I'm Will and welcome to FP1. And after Ferrari threw away yet more points at the Hungaroring last weekend, it got me thinking, just how many have the Scuderia missed out on since the start of 2022? Now this video has taken way longer than I thought it would to actually put together, so if you do end up enjoying it, be sure to hit that like button and get subscribed for more content like this in the future. But without plugging myself anymore, let's run some numbers. Before we start then, let's just lay out some ground rules. I've gone through each of the races in 2022 and removed any instance of Ferrari blowing up, crashing or making poor strategy calls. The only time I'll break this is when that incident was caused by something out of the team or driver's control. For instance, Ricciardo being Ricciardo on lap 1 in Imola. This would also be rather subjective, so if you have a different idea of how this could play out, let me know down in the comments. It'll be interesting to hear your opinion. With that established, let's start at the very beginning. The Bahrain Grand Prix. This was actually a rather successful start for the prancing horses, a 1-2 to kick off the year while both Red Bulls retired in the closing stages with engine issues. Ha, remember when we were laughing at them for that. Anyway, that means we won't have to change much here, and the same can be said for Saudi Arabia. The track better suited the Red Bull cars with its high-speed nature, and at the end of the day, Leclerc had no chance of defending from Verstappen in those final laps. So far, so good then. Well done, Ferrari. Australia, however, would be where things would start to go wrong, as it would be here where Carlos Sainz discovered his love for gravel traps, beaching his car having tried to recover from a poor qualifying effort. But what if this didn't happen? Well, given Ferrari's superior pace that weekend, and assuming Verstappen's Red Bull still opted to kill itself, I think it would be very possible for Sainz to come through to take second on the road. This would mean a Leclerc, Sainz, Perez podium, so plus 18 points for Sainz and Ferrari, while it's minus 3 for Perez and Red Bull. Round 4 in Imola would see the first of 3 sprint events that would take place in 2022. But Ferrari were cocking up before we even got to that. Carlos Sainz, having shown good form on Friday, threw that all the way by crashing in qualifying. However, since he battled it back to 4th in the sprint, and I couldn't really see him getting much higher than that given how good the Red Bulls were that weekend, we'll leave the points as is for now. This also makes it easy to assess what happened on lap 1. The Sainz would still start 4th, and would still be punted out of the race by Daniel Ricciardo. Since all this was out of Sainz's control, we're leaving it on the record. Sorry, Carlos. What we will need to address, though, is Charles Leclerc's little oopsie at the chicane. The Monegasque losing the rear with 10 laps to go and dropping down to 6th by the flag. Assuming Charles now remembers how to drive a Formula 1 car, he probably would have stayed 3rd, with Red Bull likely keeping their 1-2 result. This means 9 more points for Charles and Ferrari, and no changes at Red Bull. Miami's an easy one. Though Leclerc had the quali pace, he couldn't match Verstappen on Sunday, and no call from Ferrari was likely going to change that, so no need to edit our points tally this time. So next then, we get to Spain, or just pain if you were a Ferrari fan that weekend. Leclerc was on pole again, but this time Ferrari actually had the pace to beat the Red Bulls, and the Monegasque looked set to take his 3rd win on the year. But his Ferrari engine had other ideas, stripping him of the victory at half distance. But what if, in a crazy scenario, that Ferrari engine had worked? Well, Leclerc would have likely won that race, and on the other side of the garage, assuming Sainz didn't go for a beach holiday again, he would probably have kept ahead of Russell by the end of the Grand Prix. This means the finishing order would go Leclerc from Verstappen, Perez, Sainz and Russell, meaning plus 25 points for Ferrari and minus 10 more for Red Bull. So Monaco was next, and once again Ferrari had secured pole. Given that this is Monaco, as long as you don't completely cock up strategy or just bin it into a wall somewhere, you'll probably remain in that position by the end of the Grand Prix. Then again, we're talking about Ferrari here. The Scuderia didn't react quickly enough to Perez's pit stop, then got a bit confused when the conditions started to dry up, meaning what could have been a 1-2 ended up only being P2 and P4. In this revised timeline though, Ferrari have strategists that are somewhat competent, and their 1-2 from qualifying remains at the end of the 78 laps. Leclerc ahead of Sainz, then Perez beating out Verstappen. This means plus 13 points for Leclerc, while Checo and Max lose 13 and 3 points respectively. 16 in total for the Red Bull team. One street track would follow another, and Baku would play host to round 8 of the season. But it was a similar story for Ferrari, Leclerc's engine deciding it didn't fancy the World Championship anymore, blowing up while he was in the lead once again. Thing was, this time Red Bull clearly had the quicker car. Charles was only in the lead because he was yet to pit, so assuming he stayed in the race, I'm only going to give him P2 behind Verstappen for this one. Leclerc though wasn't the only Ferrari to go pop in Azerbaijan. The Sainz pulled to the side of the road early doors as well. This makes it even harder to assume where he would finish, but given it was Carlos Sainz, let's just say P4. So to confirm, that's Verstappen still winning, but Leclerc coming home in second. Then it's the team's respective slave drivers filling out P3 and 4. With both Ferraris now finishing, it's plus 30 in the championship for them, while minus 3 for Perez once again. Now, since we're ignoring the Italian squad's engines being, well, rather Italian, this would mean Charles Leclerc wouldn't need to take a penalty for the next race in Canada. And given how quickly he'd side through the field, I'm going to be rather generous on this one and give him the win, finishing ahead of Verstappen and Sainz, with Perez still retiring as he did in the real-life GP. So then, that's another 12 points for Ferrari, and 7 more gone for Red Bull. And that takes us to Silverstone, where the Scuderia debuted a new way to lose the championship. Ferrari would take some pressure off the strategists and instead leave it up to the drivers to determine who would win the Grand Prix. That went as you would expect, with Sainz holding up Leclerc, allowing Lewis Hamilton to close in. When Ferrari did finally act, they only pit Sainz when the safety car came out for Ocon, leaving Leclerc as a sitting duck and meaning he would come home only in P4 by the flag. So what if they'd pitted both cars onto fresh rubber, and then prioritised Leclerc because they actually wanted to win the championship? Well, that would likely lead to another 1-2, with Perez rounding out the podium and Verstappen finishing 7th after he picked up some AlphaTauri upgrades mid-race. Though in this scenario, the constructors' points difference isn't as big as you might think, Charles picks up 13 more points over Verstappen in this one, which, as you'll see, has some pretty big consequences down the road. Moving on to Austria then, and though Ferrari decided to squabble again in the sprint, I don't think this would have affected their finishing position much, with Max Verstappen still way ahead by the time the race was over. That wouldn't be the case on Sunday though, as Ferrari found some form and were on for a 1-2 before... well, you get the gist at this point. Provided you weren't able to cook hot dogs on Sainz's Ferrari, he would likely have passed Verstappen for P2, giving the Scuderia another 18 points in the championship, while Max drops 3 more. France again is a bit of a tricky one, as if Sainz kept his Austria engine, he wouldn't need to start the race from the back, and going off his form that weekend, he very likely could have challenged Leclerc for the win were he out front. Though, for simplicity's sake, let's say Ferrari prevent that from happening somehow. Ignoring Leclerc doing his trademark retirement while leading the race trick, and Ferrari cocking up Sainz's strategy, we'd probably get another 1-2 for the Tifosi to enjoy, which would give Ferrari another 33 points, while Red Bull would dock 14 for finishing 3rd and 6th. All that leaves us then is Hungary, and if we take Mattia Binotto's word for it that Leclerc couldn't have won the race despite his team's inept strategy decisions, we'll let Max keep his win, with Charles coming home P2 and Sainz and Perez finishing 5th and 6th on the road. That would mean another 8 points for Ferrari, with only a 2-point deduction for Red Bull this time. So where exactly does that leave us at the end of the day? Well, tallying up all the extra points gained and lost, see the Scuderia go into the summer break with an extra 172 points than they do now. 128 of those going to Leclerc, and the other 44 heading in Sainz's direction. Red Bull, on the other hand, lose out on 61 points, split fairly evenly between their 2 drivers. But would this affect the championship at all? Well, you guys aren't idiots, so yes, as you can probably already tell, it really does. Were Ferrari to have this perfect start to the season, Leclerc would be topping the table on 306 points, with Verstappen miles behind on 228. Carlos Sainz, having not spent half the season in the gravel, is now also ahead of Perez by 75 points going into Spa. As for the constructors, the Scuderia lead this by an absolute mile, 136 points clear of Red Bull, with little hope of the Milton Keynes-based team catching up. So what can we take out of all this? Well, in reality, it's unrealistic to assume that Ferrari would have a perfect start to the season like this, and not make a single mistake. We're all human after all. But take out just a few of the senile decisions the team have made, especially in the most recent Grand Prix, we could be looking at a very different championship picture, one that could have gone down to the final race in Abu Dhabi like we had in 2021. That said, do we really want that? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and got subscribed, helping us get closer to that 50,000 subscriber mark. We are very nearly there now. A big thank you as well to all my patrons for help supporting the work I do, and if you want to get involved in that regard, or just check out any of my other social media channels, the links to all of that are down in the description below. But for now, that's all from me. I'll see you soon with another video, but until then, have a good one.